every stain that had the 25 allele in it, G10, G11, and G13, was in close proximity to that notch on the wrist.
Yes.
Could you step back to the board and just go G10, G11, and G13?
G10, again, as I mentioned earlier, is a little closer to the notch than the red line shows. G11 is on the outside near the notch area, and then G13 is along that stitch, along the notch, along the palmar surface near the wrist.
Okay, why don't we finish with G14 from the Rockingham glove, number 9. No RFLP tests were done on that stain?
On G14, no RFLP, only D1S80.
Only D1S80. What results did you obtain?
The results were as follows. The type was determined to be basically a 24-24 with a possible trace of the 18 allele.
Good. And would you remove the cover from that board? And the 25 is not in that stain, or you did not detect it, is that right?
That's correct.
Were you able to exclude, based on that, Mr. Simpson, the defendant, as the possible source of that stain?
We did not detect the 25 alleles, so we were able to exclude him on that.
And are those results consistent with a mixture of the two victims?
Well, the way we phrased that was that it was certainly the 24-24 by itself was consistent with Ronald Goldman's D1S80 type. We noted that it was there was a possible contribution from Nicole Brown on the 18 allele, the basis of the 18 allele.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the sock testing results? I'd like to, the sock result board has previously been marked as Exhibit 262, and we should have 262A then for the sock photo board then.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to stand up and take a stretch while we're waiting to locate the exhibit, go ahead. stack in the hallway? We found it, okay. Mr. Harmon.
Okay, Mr. Sims, would you step up to the photo board that we've marked as 262A? And just examine the photo board and make sure we've got things accurately labeled.
Okay.
Okay, and the board depicts two photos of sock A, is that correct?
Yes.
And then one photo of sock B.
Yes.
And for consistency, sock A is the one that had the cutout that Greg Matheson sent you,
Yes.
and the substrate control.
Yes.
Okay. And you performed additional sampling and testing on stains from sock B,
Yes. As well as sock.
as well as sock A. And are there still a number of these minute areas that you detected blood that have never been tested?
Well, they've never been tested by me since I sent them back in November.
Okay, that you have never tested.
That's correct.
Okay. Why don't we start out with 42A1? 42 is your designation for
This-
for LAPD item 13, which were obtained from Mr. Simpson's home.
Yes, 42 is our designation.
Okay. And the A1, what does that specify?
That specifies the cutout stain that we received from Mr. Matheson.
In the little tube you described yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you step up to the result board, 262, if you would. And you described yesterday, and we showed just a few of the RFLP auto-read results for 42A1. How many actual RFLP auto-reads or genetic marker tests were performed on 42A1, the cutting that Greg Matheson sent you from the socks, number 13?
In our laboratory, we have now looked at it at 11 genetic marker, another 11 loci,
11 loci, 11 probes,
11 probes.
11 genetic markers.
Yes.
Okay. Would you remove the cover from that? And yesterday, you described, I believe, that that sock stain, 13A1, or your 42A1, was actually run on two different gels, or two different sets of RFLP tests, is that right?
Yes.
And the sum total of different probes or different genetic markers from those two tests is 11.
That's correct.
Did you subject DNA, extracted DNA from that same stain to PCR testing?
Yes, the PCR testing on that particular sample was done by Steve Myers in our laboratory.
Okay, and what sorts of tests were performed?
That was DQ alpha and D1S80 tests.
And what results were obtained?
The results that were obtained were a DQ alpha type 1.1 and a D1S80 type 1818.
And whom are those PCR results consistent with?
Those would be consistent with Nicole Brown.
And not consistent with Ronald Goldman?
That's correct.
And the defendant?
That's correct.
It's not consistent with him.
Not consistent with the defendant.
Could you remove the not excluded cover? And this is a stain that you sent extracted DNA to Cellmark Diagnostics, is that correct?
That's correct.
How many, if we assume that the Cellmark results are accurately depicted on that chart, how many different separate genetic marker tests were performed on stain 13A, which Greg Matheson cut out from the socks 13?
And this is just with DNA markers.
DNA markers.
Excuse me. The 5 here we would subtract 2 from, I believe, because Cellmark looks at 2 probes that uses 2 probes that we use.
So,
So that's
could you
14.
explain that again to the jury a little bit?
Yeah. The Cellmark uses a different enzyme for restriction than we do, but they look at 2 of the same probes that we do. So there is some correlation in those results. I don't know offhand exactly what that correlation is, but those are not entirely independent results, obviously.
So we'll throw them out. We won't count them.
For our purposes of what we're talking about now, I would throw those out.
Okay. How many different genetic marker tests were performed aside from conventional serology?
We would now have 11 plus the 3, which would be 14. The DQ alpha would be 15. D1S80 would be 16. And then I believe we had 5 for the poly marker. So that's now, I believe, 21.
21 genetic marker tests.
21 genetic marker tests.
Now, if the chart is correct, you obtained the same DQ alpha results as Cellmark did on the same DNA.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to the stain that you have designated 42A2, which is from SOC 13A. Could you come over here and show us on, could you use that long pointer? 42A2.
42A2 is now on the upper part of the sock. It's opposite of where the LAPD, the opposite side from the LAPD cutout, so it's up here.
Okay. What sorts of tests did you subject that stain to?
42A2 was subjected to DQ alpha and D1S80 type.
What results did you obtain?
The DQ alpha type was 1.1, 1.2. The D1S80 type was 24, 25.
And whom are those results consistent with from among the reference types in this case?
Those would be consistent with the defendant, Mr. Simpson.
And are they inconsistent with Nicole Brown?
Yes.
Are they inconsistent with Ronald Goldman?
Yes.
Any question about that?
No.
Okay, could you remove from the not excluded column the cover? So are you saying that Mr. Simpson could be the source of that stain?
Yes,
Not that he is the source of that stain.
that's correct.
And Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman are not the source of that stain.
They would be excluded.
42A3 from SOC 13A.
Yes.
Could you show us where that is?
Yes. This is now on the same side as the LAPD cutout, which is where I'm pointing to the LAPD cutout. You move up the sock and 42A3 is up in this region. It's in the general area, but on the opposite side that 42A2 is on. So, yes, it's on the opposite side.
Okay, and what sort of tests did you perform on that?
The tests that were performed were DQ alpha and D1S80, and I'm currently performing an RFLP analysis on that stain.
On that same stain?
On that same stain.
What results did you obtain from that stain?
The PCR results were DQ alpha type 1.1, 1.2. D1S80 results were 24, 25.
And whom are those results consistent with from among the reference types?
Again, that would be consistent with the defendant's types.
Inconsistent with Nicole Brown
Yes,
and inconsistent with Ronald Goldman.
yes,
No question about that.
no question.
Could you remove the not excluded cover? So you mentioned you're performing additional tests. Those tests could not change who's excluded, could they?
Well, for example, if those tests excluded the defendant, they would change that. But they're
I
not
did-
going to change the results with regard to Nicole Brown or Ronald Goldman.
Right. 42A4, the stain which is on SOC 13A in the toe region. Could you show us where that is?
Yes, I don't think we mentioned this one yesterday when we were looking at the video, but this is down in the upper toe area of the sock A.
Okay. And what sorts of tests did you perform on that stain?
That was subjected to PCR test, DQ alpha and D1S80.
What results?
The results were DQ alpha type 1.1, 1.2. D1S80 results were 24, 25.
And those are the same results you obtained on 42A2 and 42A3, are they not?
Yes, they are.
Could you uncover the PCR results? And could you uncover whom you did not exclude from the 3 reference samples provided to you? And Nicole Brown is excluded.
Yes,
Ronald Goldman's excluded.
yes,
No question about whether the two victims in this case are excluded.
no question.
Okay. 42B1 now, we've moved over to SOC 13B. Would you show us where that is on the photo board?
Yes, 42B1 is in this area where I showed there was, on the video, there were a lot of additional stains.
Let's talk about that for a moment. When you say there are a lot of additional stains in the area of 42B1, could you elaborate for a moment?
Well, the elaboration would be that in looking at that under the stereo microscope, there are a number of other stains in that particular area that I examined.
And how do they compare in size with the stain that you've analyzed as 42B1?
Generally they're smaller.
Can you quantify about how many there are?
I'd have to look at my notes again, but I think there were in the neighborhood of 10 on that side, something like that.
Could you, let's be accurate, would you do that?
From my notes, I count about 12 areas.
Okay, and
Mr. Harmon.
thank you, Your Honor. While you're at it, we're going to talk about your results in 42B2. What's the relationship of 42B1, 42B2, and these other 12 tiny little stains?
Well, they're all in that same general area, and some of them are significantly smaller than 42B1 and 42B2.
When you say general area, can you give us a, why don't you show us up on the photo board 262A?
The general area I'm talking about, it's somewhat hard to see because those logo marks give me my map points and they don't show up very well in the photograph. But it's basically down in I'll sort of mark the lower boundaries down in this part of the sock up to about here.
So if we drew a band around the sock from, it's kind of bordered by B1 and B2 on that side of the sock that's shown in the photo, is that the general area they were in?
Well, I would go up about, yes, about as far up as B2. That's correct.
Okay.
So somewhere in this general area.
Okay. Why don't we talk about the type tests you perform on 42B1 on sock 13B near the ankle?
Okay.
What test did you do?
The tests that were performed on 42B1 were the PCR test, DQ alpha, and D1S80.
What were your results?
For DQ alpha, the type was a 1.1, comma 1.1. There was a possible trace of the 1.2 allele, and then on the D1S80 it was 18, comma 18.
Okay, could you uncover those from the result board? Okay, let's talk about this possible trace of 1.2. You've described that previously with some of your other results. What does that mean in the context of this case? Are you telling us this is a mixture?
No, I can't say for sure that that's a mixture. I cannot decide between two possibilities. One is that there really is a trace of that 1.2 allele present from some other individual. The second possibility is that this is showing up as a very faint dot in the typing system.
Now, if there were really a trace of a 1-2 in there, would you, or strike that, I'll come to that in a second. From among the three reference types in this case, were you able to exclude anyone as the possible source of 42B1?
Yes,
Whom?
I was able to exclude Ronald Goldman, and I felt also that we could exclude the defendant based on the fact that we didn't find his 2425 on the D1S80.
Okay, now you're saying you can exclude him even though there's a possible trace of the 1.2 in there?
Well, I'd have to feel more secure about there being a definite 1.2 before I'd make a statement that he...
Okay, so would you remove the cover from the not excluded column? And I believe you mentioned that part of the reason you feel comfortable excluding Mr. Simpson is that you didn't see anything of his in the D1S80 genetic marker?
That's correct.
Setting aside the possible trace 1.2 for a moment, is everything that you saw in 42B1 consistent with the genetic marker test results for Nicole Brown's reference sample?
Yes, the DQ alpha type is 1.1, comma 1.1, and the D1S80 type is 1818.
Okay, let's move on, and we still have, we're getting a patch, Your Honor. We have a misnumbering here. It's described, it's your 42B1, and it's actually, the chart has SOC 13A, and it's actually 13B. Jonathan's getting us a B label for that. Can we proceed for the moment?
Proceed.
And that's also near the ankle. You've already shown us where that was. What sorts of tests did you subject this stain to?
Again, that was subjected to DQ alpha and D1S80 typing.
What results did you obtain?
The results were the same as for B1. In other words, B1 and B2 gave the same results. DQ alpha type would be 1.1, 1.1 with possible trace 1.2. The D1S80 type was 1818.
Okay, would you remove the results from the PCR results? And would you remove the not excluded? Whom are you not able to exclude?
That would be Nicole Brown again. I was not able to exclude her.
And in spite of the possible trace 1.2, the same explanation, you feel that there's no reason to include Mr. Simpson in those results?
That's correct.
Was there a substrate control that was submitted to you or that you cut out to conduct testing in this case?
Yes, there were substrate controls taken from the SOCs.
How many different substrate controls did you take?
The substrate controls that I took were, first of all, the LAPD cutout. I used that one. And then I used one for 42A2 in that general area. I cut one out near stain 42A2, which I used to serve as a control in that upper area of the sock. So it served as a control for both A2 and A3. And then also for 42A4, there was a substrate control area. That was the one down towards the toe. And then finally for 42B1, I took one control for that general area to cover both stain B1 and stain B2.
And you processed those substrate controls just as you processed the evidence stains that you just described?
Yes.
And what, generally speaking, can you make a categorical statement about the results of your processing of the substrate controls on the socks?
Yes, they all gave negative results on the PCR typing tests.
Now, was there one that behaved a little bit differently than the others.
Yes, on, I believe it was 42A4 in the upper toe region, that control.
What was there, now you've already told us it produced no typing results.
That's correct.
And is that critical, that it produced no typing results?
Well, it's not critical when you're talking about an item of clothing that it's negative. If it's negative, you can make an inference from that. But if there was some background, that would not be totally unexpected in this kind of a sample.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is it didn't produce a type, is that right?
That's correct.
And is that what you're looking for when you're typing substrate controls? If it does not produce a type, that's a significant result.
Yes, if it doesn't produce a type, then it gives you confidence in the typing results for the blood stains.
What was it about the control that was a little bit different than the other controls?
For that particular sample, there was some DNA detected on a yield gel. It was just a yield gel.
I know we went through this before. Could you just give us about a 90-second on why that doesn't undermine any of the results in this case?
Phrase the question.
Does that DNA on the yield gel undermine your confidence in any of the results in this case?
No, it doesn't. I don't know whether or not, for example, that DNA might be of non-human origin. There may be some bacteria or fungus there or something like that. And the point is it did not produce a PCR result as far as typing. So we saw something on the yield gel that was DNA, but it did not produce a typing result.
Okay. Your Honor, I was going to move to Bundy now. Do you want to do that or wait?
Well, let's take a, since we'll have to change boards, let's take the opportunity to take a,
Right now, if that's okay.
yes, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Do not, can we have it quiet, please? Do not form any opinions about the case. Do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. Stand in recess until 1 o'clock, and Mr. Sims, you can step down. Thank you. $2:15.
Okay. Oh, Your Honor, after we do the Bundy boards, we're going to bring in the big light box.
The
Okay.
monster.
The monster.
All right. Jury parade by the box.
Yes, Your Honor, we'll, because of the number of auto reds, we'll have to do them in 3 different sets.
All right.
I think we're organized to do that, so.
All right, we'll make sure there's no extraneous. We may have to move the cart there and a few other things.
Our slogans can't be seen here?
All right, let the record reflect we've been joined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Mr. Sims, would you resume the witness stand, please? Good afternoon again, Mr. Sims.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
You're reminded, sir, you are still under oath, and Mr. Harmon, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Sims, let's move on to the testing that you performed on stains that were collected from the Bundy crime scene, if you will. And I'd like to display Exhibit 165, the photo board. Will that one work over here, or do we need it over? Okay, and then the exhibit result board, Exhibit 259.
Mr. Fairlow, is there any more, I think it's actually 1492, it's touching the screen. All right. Can you pull it out just a little? All right, thank you, Mr. Fairlow.
Mr. Sims, did your laboratory perform DNA testing on numerous items that were collected at the Bundy crime scene?
Yes.
Starting at the top, did your laboratory perform any DNA testing on item number 47, which was associated with the Bundy walkway, the stain closest to the victims in this case?
Yes, we performed PCR, DQ alpha, and D1S80 tests.
And what were the results of those tests?
The results for DQ alpha were 1.1, 1.2. For D1S80, 24, 25.
And are those results consistent with any of the three reference samples in this case that were provided to you?
Yes, they are.
And whom are they consistent with?
They are consistent with the defendant, Mr. Simpson.
Are they inconsistent with Nicole Brown?
Yes.
Are they inconsistent with Ronald Goldman?
Yes.
Is there any question about their inconsistency with Ronald Goldman and Nicole Brown?
There is no question.
Okay, could you, if you can, reach up there and remove the cover for... I don't think so. huh?
we need the layers to do this one.
All right, Mr. Fairlow, let's leave it there, and 1492 as we progress, we'll leave it up.
And is that the same 25 allele with the D1S80 genetic marker that you observed on the stains, those three stains near the notch area of the glove that was recovered at Rockingham?
Yes, they both have the 25 allele.
Your Honor, excuse me, Your Honor, if it would be logistically better, I would stipulate, why doesn't he just pull all the markers he's going to pull off the board, then put it up so that there's no problem with the jury, and we don't have to go through that. No, sir.
Harmon, any objection?
Pull them all off, Mr. Sims. Crank it
All right,
up.
let's raise it back up. you.
Mr. Sims, if our chart, if our result chart is correct, Exhibit 259, cell mark obtained as DQ alpha type 1112 and a polymarker inclusion which describe Mr. Simpson, the defendant, as the possible source of the stains. Are your results corroborative of those results?
Yes, they are consistent.
And you obtained the same DQ alpha result as they did.
Yes, we did.
Now, is this one of the stains where one or the other of the labs extracted the DNA and shared it with the other lab?
No, we sampled separate swatches or separate swatch material.
Okay, so your results were produced from a swatch.
Yes.
Okay, let's move to number 48. You performed DQ alpha D1S80 testing on item number 48 from the Bundy walkway, the next one down the walkway. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Same result as item 47?
Yes, again, the DQ alpha type was 1.1, 1.2. The D1S80 type was 24, 25.
Okay. Moving, and again, that result is corroborative of the cell mark results.
Yes, it is. We obtained the same DQ alpha result.
And it's identical with 47.
It is the same result.
Item number 49, the next one down the walkway. It's in the lower photograph on the left-hand corner of Exhibit 165. What results did you, I'm sorry, that's a cell mark result.
Yes.
Let's move down to item number 50, the next one after 49 along the Bundy walkway, which is depicted in the upper left-hand, second one from the left on the photo board. What results did you obtain from that stain?
Our laboratory detected DQ alpha type 1.1, 1.2. The D1S80 type was 24, 25.
And is that the same result that you obtained on 48 and 47?
Yes, it is.
And did you obtain the same DQ alpha result as cell mark obtained on different swatches?
Yes.
And did your results from item number 50 along the Bundy walkway, did they exclude the two victims in this case?
Yes, they did exclude the two victims.
As did the results in item 48. Did they exclude the two victims in this
Yes,
case?
they did.
Moving down, farther down, the farthest stain along the walkway, item number 52, which is in the photograph that I'm pointing to here. What sort of testing did you do on that stain?
On that stain, we tested for DQ alpha and D1S80.
You obtained the same results as you did on 50 and 48 and 47.
Yes, we did.
And whom were you able to exclude?
We were able to exclude the two victims in this case.
And whom were you able, or were you not able to exclude?
We were not able to exclude the defendant.
And moving along to, at a later point, you've already described how you sampled items from the nail kit from Nicole Brown.
Yes.
Okay, let's just reflect back on the items that you sampled and described, because the numbering system sometimes gets confusing. Could you relate your item numbers to the LAPD item numbers, which are 84A and 84B?
Yes, our item number was 46B for their item number 84A, which is the left-hand material. And then our number 45A was or 45 was our number for their number 84B, the right-hand material.
And just to get a little more descriptive here, 45A1B,
Yes,
is that the blood that was closely associated with whatever that was that you thought might have been tissue
yes, that's that blood next to that area.
and that you determined was not tissue?
That's correct.
And go on to the next item, and just so we can relate it to what you observed or what you examined.
Yes, that would be, which item now?
Well, 45B is the scrapings from the right
Yes,
hand.
45B those are the right-hand scrapings.
Okay. Did you obtain, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you obtain the same results from all three items all three stains that you tested from the nail clippings from the left hand, the nails scrapings from the right hand, and the nail clippings from the right hand?
Yes, those were tested for D1S80 by Renee Montgomery, and she obtained the same results for all three samples.
Okay. Will you describe whether or not any of the three reference types that were provided to you were excluded as the possible source of that stain?
Yes, two of the reference samples were excluded. That would be the reference sample from Ronald Goldman and also from the defendant, Mr. Simpson.
Okay, so you were not able to exclude Nicole Brown as the source of the scrapings that were in the bindle from either the left hand, is that right?
That's correct.
Or the right hand? Is
That's
that-
correct.
Or the item that you've described as 45A1B, which is from the right hand clippings, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are your results from the three items, from the nail clippings and scrapings from the left hand and the right hand, are they corroborative of the results that are listed for Cellmark on the result board?
Yes, they are consistent in that Nicole Brown, again, would not be excluded as the source of those items.
And now, how many genetic markers, if you combine the Cellmark testing on the three items from the nail clippings and scrapings with the D1S80 marker, how many genetic markers were tested in order to try to demonstrate that Nicole Brown could not be the source of what was under her fingernails or on her fingernails?
I would check to the word combine.
Sustain.
How many genetic markers, if you counted, if Cellmark's description, if the description of their results is accurate, how many markers, genetic markers, were tested in order to determine whether Nicole Brown could or could not be the source of the blood under her fingernails or on her fingernail in one instance?
There would be a total of 7 genetic markers because there would be 5 from polymarker. DQ alpha would make 6, and D1S80 would make 7.
Okay. The last three items on the result board are 115, 116, and 117. They're described as being on the rear gate at Bundy,
Yes.
and those are reflected in the photographs labeled 115, 116, and 117. What sorts of tests did you subject those three stains to?
May I refer to my...
Sure.
Those 3 samples from the rear gate have been subjected to 2 PCR tests, and we are also currently running an RFLP test on one of them.
What were the results of the PCR test on those samples? Or strike that. Preliminary, did you get the same results for the PCR test that you subjected those 3 samples to?
Yes, all 3 gave the same results.
And what are those results?
The results are that the DQ alpha type was 1.1, 1.2. The D1S80 type was 24, 25.
And why don't you remove those covers, Mr. Sims? Go ahead. Are those results consistent with not being from Nicole Brown?
Yes, by those results, we would exclude Nicole Brown.
And would you also exclude Ronald Goldman?
Yes, we would also exclude Ronald Goldman.
And from among the 3 reference samples provided to you, were you able to exclude the defendant in this case?
No, we could not.
Now, I've asked you this before, but I want to ask you this again. Are those DQ alpha and D1S80 results together consistent with being from an offspring, a child of Nicole Brown and the defendant?
No, they are not.
They could not be from a child of Nicole Brown and the defendant.
No, they could not.
Let's go back to the top again, and if you would, I'd like to ask you a general question about all the stains that you've described. Were substrate controls tested, submitted to the same process that the evidence stains were on items that are on this board from the Bundy crime scene?
By that, you mean 47, 48, 50, and 52, as well as the lower items?
Yes, let's separate out the nail clippings first.
Okay. For those items, 47, 48, 50, and 52, along with 115, 116, and 117, we also tested substrate controls in both of the PCR systems.
And did all of those controls test clean or not produce any sort of DNA type in any of the tests?
They were all negative.
They were all negative. What about the nail clippings, which are described as 84A and B, the three samples that you actually tested? Was it possible to obtain a substrate control?
There would not be what we would consider a substrate control for those types of samples.
And why is that?
Well, because this is material from under the fingernails, and one does not obtain a clean area from that kind of sample, and particularly in a case like this where all the ones we saw had some blood associated.
Okay, now does that in any way, the absence of a substrate control for the nail clipping items, does that in any way undermine your confidence in the results that you've just presented to the jury?
No.
Okay, Your Honor, this would be a point to move the light box in, if that would be okay?
All right.
Court's permission, I'd like Mr. Sims to display on the light box exhibits 269A through I,
Yes.
and at the same time, so that the jury may orient themselves, display on the Elmo 269C1, which is one of those. It's the first autorad that we actually displayed that we have
With the arrows.
marked with the arrows.
Yes. All right, do you need Mr. Sims to step down?
Yes, please.
Just so it's clear, these are copies, not the originals.
We can substitute the originals.
Let's proceed.
Okay, we're just waiting to get 269C1. Jonathan, why don't you get 270A1 and 271A1 as well? So we can put up on the Elmo 269C1. We've got everything. Mr. Sims, we're going to project 269C1, and I just want you to tell the jury what's on there, and we'll display it as you put the arrows on it so they can correlate the samples, if you would. Okay, now this is one of several autorads, and the arrows point to the match between which samples? Sure.
The samples that match are the Nicole Brown reference sample and the SOC 13A stain sample.
And the complete set of autorads shows the complete set of genetic marker tests that were done on this gel that show the match between the SOC and Nicole Brown. Is that right?
Yes, this is, you recall, this is all involving the SOC. The SOC also appears on some additional, one additional gel, and that would be a second set of autorads.
Okay. Good. Your Honor, this would be the point. We can all step back and let the jury come through.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, starting with juror number 1, and take your time, as much time as you need. Mrs. Robertson. Clark. Mr. Clark, let me chat with you.
And then 270A1 on the Elmo.
All right, proceed.
Thank Chair, if you could just briefly describe the samples that are on there to get the jury oriented to your autorads that we put up there.
For this gel or membrane, I again put the 3 reference samples on this particular gel. There's also an additional lane that has the sock, the same stain that you saw on the previous set, and now I've also added stain G3 from the glove to this particular gel. So there is some duplication of the sock as far as some of the loci that were examined.
Mr. Harmon.
Can we have the jury review the autorads, Your Honor?
All right, sure, number 1.
Match between the bands for Mr. Goldman's reference sample and 2 of the other 2 bands in the glove G1 stain.
Can we have the jury view those autorads, Your Honor?
Yes. All right, thank you, counsel. The record should reflect all the jurors have had the opportunity to review the third set of auto rats. Mr. Harmon.
Yes, that, can we get that out? Is it still plugged in?
All right, Mr. Harmon, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sims, I want to ask you a question about the consistency of certain results, and specifically I want to ask you about stains in which you did PCR typing and produced results DQ alpha 1.1, 1.2, and D1S80 2425.
Okay.
Is it true that as a result of your testing, you achieved those same results, which are consistent with Mr. Simpson, on item number 6 from Rockingham,
Yes.
item number 42A2, which is SOC 13A,
Yes.
This is asked and answered 4 times now, so if we could get to another point.
We have heard this, and we've seen it on the result board.
Okay. Is it true that you produced the same results for DQ alpha 1.1, 1.2 on items from Rockingham, from Mr. Simpson's SOC, from Mr. Simpson's Bronco, from the
This is
Bundy
same thing,
crime
and it's
scene?
leading and
Sustain.
it's getting to another.
Sustain.
What,
We have heard this.
Mr. Sims, as a forensic scientist, what's the impact or what's the implication of duplicate testing by separate labs? What issues does that address?
Well, duplicate testing is important in a way that it provides a control in case any mistakes might be made by one laboratory. Then by having a second laboratory do the same operations, that would be a check on the consistency of the operations in the process.
Anything else if the duplicate testing is of the same sample? In terms of conclusions that one could draw from the same testing?
Yes, in other words, one would look then to make the same conclusions as to who might be included or excluded as a source.
Okay. And well, we'll come back to that. Mr. Sims, can you think of any scientific reason why the tests that your lab subjected, the variety of stains that were given to you, would produce correct results on stains at the Rockingham address, but incorrect results on the Bundy stains and the Bronco stains?
Objection.
What's the objection?
Leading, speculative, vague, not specific.
Sustain.
Mr. Sims, what scientific reason, if any, can you produce that would explain why your results might be correct on stains from Rockingham, but incorrect from stains that were collected at Bundy and the Bronco?
Do you understand the question?
I think I do, although there's some question about scientific reason.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Is there any scientific reason why your tests would work on stains from Mr. Simpson's house, but not on stains from the crime scene and his Bronco?
Your objection to tests working is being vague.
Sustain. Rephrase the question. Why don't you just narrow it down to one and the other? It's also compound.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sims, now listen very carefully, if you will. What scientific reason, if any, is there that your test would produce reliable results on stains from Mr. Simpson's house, but unreliable results from Bundy?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustain.
Mr. Sims, is there any scientific reason why, that you can think of, why your tests would work correctly on stains from Mr. Simpson's house, but incorrectly on stains from his
Sustain.
car?
Sustain.
Mr. Sims, now there are some other results that we have not discussed. Is that true?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Now, among the other items that were submitted to you was an item described as LAPD number 113, which was a hair,
Yes,
and I think you actually alluded to it this morning. There was no DNA that was extracted from that hair?
that's correct. That test was performed by Steve Myers, and he obtained no DNA. He detected no human DNA in that sample.
Mr. Sims, in addition to all the results that you've presented here, were specific items of clothing submitted to you, or cuttings from clothing submitted to you for testing?
Yes,
Okay, and specifically, was a pair of jeans that was identified as LAPD item number 19, Ronald Goldman's jeans, was that submitted to you for DNA testing?
yes, it was.
And were tests performed on those stains?
Now this, again, the number was?
79, you're 59.
Yes, that's correct. Item number 79, which is our DNA 59. That was a pair of pants.
And how many separate stains were tested from that item?
9.
Okay, and item number 81, LAPD item number 81, which was identified as Ronald Goldman's shirt, was that also subjected to DNA testing?
Yes.
And how many items, how many specific stains were tested?
Excuse me, we received 8 stains plus 1 control, substrate control area.
And those were all tested?
Yes, all of those were tested.
And additionally, item number 86, which was identified as Nicole Brown's dress, was that also submitted to your lab for testing?
Yes, it was.
And how many separate stains were tested?
6.
Okay. As a result, what were you attempting to look for? What was the laboratory attempting to look for when those items of clothing were tested?
I think that's calls for speculation leading testify to results.
It is compound. Once you rephrase it as to the individual items, what tests were performed?
You've reviewed all the results.
Yes, I have.
Were any results produced from the testing of those items that were foreign to either of the victims in this case, Ronald Goldman or Nicole Brown?
No, all of the results that we obtained from those various items that you mentioned of clothing were consistent with either victim or a combination thereof.
When you say combination, you mean a mixture?
Yes.
Mr. Sims, we've seen all the boards and you've described the consistency of results, and now I'd like to begin addressing how you would communicate to the jury the significance of the consistency or the matches between the reference stains and the evidence stains in this case, okay?
Okay.
Proceed.
Mr. Sims, yesterday you described your career for us in great detail, and I asked you about your experience in conventional serology, and you described how many times you testified. Of all of those times that you testified, did you provide, when it was appropriate, a statistical estimate or some sort of frequency data to assist the jury in appreciating how important or unimportant the conventional serology results were?
Yes, most of the time, not always, but most of the time.
And when you say most, why did you not present it in some cases?
Well, sometimes it was just, for example, maybe an exclusion or something like that, and the type was not, there was no need for a frequency estimate.
Okay. Now, In those times, how did you actually conduct your own population frequency studies in the conventional serology field that you relied on when you testified?
No, I did not.
Okay. What sources of information were available to you when you testified as an expert in forensic serology to provide these frequency estimates to assist juries?
I would, in those cases, I would look at both published and unpublished data.
And when you say published, where would these things be published?
For example, in the Journal of Forensic Sciences.
Okay, and that's a journal that continues to exist today?
Yes, it does.
What other sources of information did you rely on?
I would sometimes look at frequencies put together by various laboratories that had gathered data.
For example, are you familiar with how the Los Angeles Police Department compiles their conventional serology data?
Yes, I have some information about that. I believe they take a general population database.
And is that something that they publish somewhere?
I've never seen it published.
So was it unusual in your conventional serology career for you to rely on unpublished data as well as published data?
No, most of it was published, but I would rely on other data also.
Okay. And in trying to describe to the jury the significance of your conventional serology results, did you rely on the product rule?
Yes, I did.
Could you briefly explain the product rule to the jury?
The product rule describes the process whereby one looks at the various types in each of the genetic marker systems and then multiplies the frequency found in a particular system or times the frequency of a particular type in the next system, et cetera, down the line. That's the product rule.
And I mean, that's it in a vacuum, but you had individual genetic markers in the conventional serology days that you inserted into the product rule?
Yes. For example, the ABO type or the PGM type,
EAP type?
EAP type.
And the studies, both published and unpublished, justified the use of the product rule in the conventional serology context.
Yes, in particular the published studies.
Okay, and I know we went into your background quite extensively yesterday, but do those same principles generally apply in the DNA context, the product rule, multiplying individual markers or individual frequencies together?
Objection. No foundation with respect to DNA through this witness. Certainly on not what's been listed.
No, I'm not asking you to argue any further, Mr.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the court's ruling.
I haven't ruled yet. I'm thinking about it.
That's why I didn't hear it.
In the 8 seconds the trial court has to think about these things. Overruled. Proceed.
Could we have a sidebar?
Overruled.
Could I hear the question again, please?
I'll try and get it exactly the way the judge that's consistent with the ruling. Are the same principles that you relied on in conventional serology, the use of the product rule, fundamental to the estimation of population frequencies in the DNA context?
Yes.
Are you, what is there in your, is an appreciation for statistics also helpful in applying the product rule both in the conventional serology and the DNA context?
Objection vague as to
Sustained. Appreciation.
Do you have any training or education in the field of statistics that contributes to your ability to use the product rule in the conventional serology context?
objection to that linkage is compound.
Overruled.
Yes, I have taken a formal course in statistics.
And could you describe that course and how it lends itself to the use of the product rule for frequency estimates? And we're just in conventional serology, and then we'll move up to DNA.
Well, at that basic level of statistics, one's dealing with probabilities and that sort of thing. It's very basic statistics. I've also had, as part of my forensic education, discussions and learning in the application of statistics to population genetics issues.
Okay, now, so the statistics class was when and where?
That was at the University of California at Berkeley,
And when was that?
1973.
Okay, and population genetics classes in education that lend themselves to calculating frequency estimates in the DNA context, could you outline what those classes have been?
Objection as to anything in 1973 with respect to DNA.
Overall, he said in terms of conventional serology.
Just the DNA.
Now, this question is a different question.
Well, for the conventional serology, that was part of my education while I was an undergraduate at UC Berkeley as part of our forensic biology training. Subsequent to that, I'm now, as I mentioned, re-enrolled in the master's program, and certainly those issues have come up in discussions as part of our formal training. And also I've taken a one-week class from Dr. Bruce Weir that dealt with population genetics and the statistics issues with regards to forensic questions.
You want, I notice it's 2:15, do you want to?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Need to change court reporters. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't communicate with anybody or conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Stand in recess until 2:30. And Mr. Sims, you can step down. Thank you.
From which the FBI calculated D1S80 frequency. So if he's going to testify to frequencies, it seems to us that just as a pure discovery matter, he should be limited to the sources they indicated they were going to be using as their databases. To have him then look at everybody else's database or other articles and start opining on that, I think would be way beyond the scope. Finally, Mr. Harmon just produced another board that I'm going to object to with respect to concordance of Cellmark and DOJ results for different item numbers, and all that they list here are the various different probes and systems. And I think that this is plainly cumulative, argumentative, and it's under 352, it's misleading. We're striving in the use of these boards and in the rulings of the court to try to indicate to the jury what the statistical significance of the evidence is and what it isn't. And here it seems to me it's just not adding anything. In fact, it's going to be confusing to the issue to say, well, we have different genetic systems here, and there was a concordance, and then there's an implication about multiplying those and what you can determine from that, and probabilities. And it seems to me that, my lord, it's more than covered by the board they already have, where all these results are there. And so here, instead of having the genetic marker system and the statistics, you just have the genetic marker system without any further elaboration. It seems to me cumulative, argumentative, and more prejudicial than probative under 352. So those are my arguments. A, he's not qualified to rely on this data, so he shouldn't give the numbers. B, they should be limited to the databases they told us they were going to use in discovery. And C, my objections to the board.
Mr. Harmon?
Well, I'm somewhat shocked because I know in chambers the other 2 days ago, Mr. Scheck, and unfortunately this wasn't recorded, it's my recollection, said, oh, Gary can do all this, there's no problem, we're not going to object to that. And I understand things change from day to day, but I hope people's word doesn't change day to day without some prior notice to sort of expedite things. I haven't finished trying to qualify him yet, so I appreciate what the objections are, but we'll take as long as it takes to convince you that he's qualified, and it won't take as long as it'll take to convince Mr. Scheck that he's qualified, because we'll never get to that point. One does not need to be an expert in the field of population genetics to express an opinion about the statistical significance of a match in DNA typing. Prior to this date, 8 other judges in this state, and I can't vouch for those other judges, but Mr. Sims is batting 1,000 on his ability to qualify and express terms of the statistical significance of the results that he's produced. And I'm sure when the court considers his qualifications and reads the sections concerning expert testimony, which I just happen to have here, the court will realize that an expert is merely someone who has a specialized knowledge that will assist the jury in understanding the evidence to be presented. Of course, I'm paraphrasing it. In that context, once the court considers that he is qualified, then he may provide opinion testimony. And the opinion testimony must be of a type that reasonably may be relied upon by an expert in forming an opinion upon which the subject to which his testimony relates.
All right, is Mr. Scheck correct in his assumption that the various databases upon which Mr. Sims bases his opinions are those that Mr. Scheck mentioned?
Let me double check with Mr. Sims. He's partially correct, but that's still, I don't think that addresses what Mr. Scheck clearly has in mind, and that is a discussion that we had a little while ago about how inappropriate it would be for Robin Cotton to multiply her PCR results from the same piece of evidence.
We're getting off into other
Well,
realms
no,
here.
he hasn't addressed that, and I'm sure that if I qualify Mr. Sims, and that's the type of material that he may reasonably rely on, he won't object when we multiply the PCR markers of Cellmark by the PCR markers of DOJ. So let me just make one last check with Mr. Sims as far as the statistics that relate to the test results that he produced. But we should address this, the cross-lab multiplication, because that's coming right after that, Your Honor. I mean, they're intermixed within the stains, and so now's the time. Now's the time to flush that out. We have provided discovery to the defense for all of the data that they have relied on. And, you know, one of the primary ones is Dr. Blake's world study, which, by the way, is not published. It's in a nice bound cover, but it's not published. It's disseminated. So at least as far as the results by the Department of Justice lab, we have provided discovery to the defense for all of the data that we intend to rely on in producing the frequency estimates for their test results. That doesn't include the Cellmark results.
All right, what about the...
Excuse me, Your Honor, that's...
No.
It's not an
No.
answer to your question.
No.
Okay.
What about the additional board? Why isn't this completely redundant?
You know, it's under the topic of redundancy, but it relates to the question that it's illustrative. If I'd had it before the break, I would have put it up, or having shown it to Mr. Scheck. It just illustrates graphically the answer to the question that I asked him, you know, shortly after the Autorad show. I don't think it's redundant because it specifically shows which of those items do address the improbability or impossibility of lab error. So I don't agree that it's redundant in that context. It shows the redundancy in the scientific context. Could you give me 2 questions on that board, Judge? 2 questions.
Did I?
Could you give me 2 questions with that board?
And they are. If you have to read them,
I don't have them. I'm trying to remember that original question that I asked.
Your Honor.
I'll try and do it in one, Your Honor. Does this exhibit demonstrate the redundancy of duplicate testing by separate labs, which minimizes the possibility of laboratory error?
All right. I'm going to sustain the objection under a 352 basis. All of this information is on the results board. It's redundant. I don't like the word concordance in this context. I think it's argumentative. You can use that during argument. It's a nice exhibit, I would, but for these purposes, I'm going to sustain the objection. All right.
Could I just answer factually, just to see if I'm clear on this? Number one, maybe Mr. Sims can enlighten us, but in terms of his 8 court appearances, by my count, one of them would be the Griffin hearing, where no statistics were testified to, and I'm not altogether certain he can tell us whether statistics were admitted in the other court appearances. I think some of them might have even been cases where ultimately the PCR results were not admitted. Moffett? Moffett? You didn't testify? Or, but in any event, I'm not sure that the statistics were in all of them, so the inquiry could be made with respect to the PCR statistics. The other thing is that I take it that Mr. Harmon is answering yes to the court's question, did I accurately state the databases that are going to be relied upon? I mean, that's all I'm trying to ascertain. Did he?
I took that as a yes as well.
And then finally, is there anything else that Mr. Harmon, before the court rules, that can be made by way of an offer of proof outside the hearing of the jury with respect to his qualifications, so that I can deal with it now and we don't have to go through it all in front of the jury? I don't have to stand up and object. That's the purpose of this motion in limine.
Well, the problem is the plaintiff is entitled to establish the qualifications of their witness before the final fact.
I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying if he could make an offer of proof as to what else there is that qualifies Mr. Sims, then I can make my objection if the court is going to rule against me and it's preserved, and I don't have to stand up like a popinjay and jump up and all the rest of it. That's the point of doing this now.
All right. Any other comment, Mr. Harmon?
Just my offer of proof is he's eminently qualified, and I suggest that you rule on that, and he won't have to jump up and down.
All right. That's very helpful.
Otherwise, no,
All right. Thank you, counsel. Luckily, the appellate courts and the legislature give wide discretion to the trial court in ruling upon whether or not somebody qualifies as an expert witness. Here, Mr. Sims has many years of technical experience in the field of forensic science, and is familiar with and actually has hands-on experience with the actual testing technique itself. And I'm convinced also that the databases that have been suggested are reliable for these purposes. I'm also convinced that the amount of training that he has had gives him an amount of expertise in the area that is beyond that of the ordinary lay person. So I find him qualified for these purposes. All right, and Mr. Scheck, if you want, at the point in time when the opinion is offered, you can make your foundational objection for the record if you like.
Actually, what I would prefer to do is just make it now and as we continue. The only other point to be raised then is there is that saying that he's qualified to recite what the frequencies would be if you plug in the FBI data to the alleles and the DQ alpha and the D1S80 is one thing. To then, as Mr. Harmon has indicated he intends to do, have this witness testify that it is appropriate and he can multiply the DQ alpha frequencies and the polymarker frequencies against the D1S80 frequencies, I think that is beyond the expertise of this witness.
Mr. Harmon? Since we'll get to that shortly, I'm sure.
sure. I mean, we need to throw Cellmark into the picture too, because that's the next extension of that. It's the same product rule. It's the same statistical manipulation. He has testified to the product rule in the PCR cases. I'm not sure. The distinction that Mr. Scheck tried to make is interesting but totally irrelevant. It matters little that the evidence was excluded as the result of some admissibility hearing. What matters is that's a different issue than whether he was qualified to present and express.
We're beyond that issue. The issue
Okay.
is Mr. Sims qualified to not only give frequencies of the testing that he did, but also combined the results with the testing that Cellmark did, and then come up with an additional product rule number.
Okay, so
That's-
we're focused on that?
Yes.
That's the last point. Oh, I'm
In case you
sorry.
didn't hear, I ruled in your favor regarding the other matter.
How did I miss that? No, and I think that's very helpful because that gets to Section 804 of the Evidence Code. Opinion, I mean, if you combine 801, what the opinion testimony of the expert may be based on, 801B, with 804, where an opinion, where it's appropriate, can be based on the hearsay statement of another expert, as long as it's described that way. That's the rule of law in California. So there are two steps to it. Mr. Sims, if I'm ever allowed to get him back on the stand, will explain that it is appropriate for him to rely on data. He's already expressed it in the conventional serology area, where this is unpublished data. I mean, the Blake stuff is unpublished. It's in a nice little cover, but it's not published. It's a compilation of things that are derived from other areas. And it's in exactly the same category as the data that was provided by Robin Cotton to Mr. Sims. Same category, same standing. So the real question I think that you have to address is contained in 801 and 804. Is Mr. Sims telling you the truth when he tells you these are the kinds of things that experts can rely on?
Foundational matter. It's one thing to rule, as the court has, that it's okay for Mr. Sims to say that within the various markers in the FBI database, the different RFLP markers, there's a sufficient scientific basis to assume independence and multiply those, to multiply across loci and to multiply within a locus. Again, with respect to DQ alpha, there is published data by Helmuth et al., and Dr. Blake just adds some more. But again, that's just dealing with the independence of the markers within the DQ alpha system. And across each of those, across those various alleles. And similarly with respect to D1S80, which is one publication. The issue as to whether or not for these systems one can assume that each of them is independent of the other, particularly when some of these markers are on the same chromosomes as each other between those systems, I think is clearly beyond this witness's expertise. So it seems to me that in terms of the court's discretion, to allow them this chain multiplication at this point in time through this witness, when you have Dr. Weir coming in terms of whether or not this can be done at all, is an extremely serious foundational issue. I think is just carrying this way too far and presents a real problem. So I think it's in terms of the court's previous ruling, it's one thing to say that he can plug in the numbers and compute the frequencies within the systems. It's quite another to say that he has sufficient expertise in terms of population genetics or assumptions of independence to multiply these marker systems against each other.
I have one more try, Your Honor. Now that I understand.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Wait, final comment. Now that I see, I thought it was whether he could rely on the data. Now that I see clearly what Mr. Scheck's objection, the answer is very simple. It's the same product rule, number one. Number two, the FBI article, which Mr. Sims has in his briefcase, Mr. Scheck has trivialized as it's just one article. How many do you need? Demonstrates the if that's not something that they waived when they waived their hearing way back in January, and I contend that it is, the FBI article, which Mr. Sims can be glad to demonstrate, shows the statistical independence, which then justifies the use of the same old product rule to multiply these frequencies. So I thought we were going on whether he could rely on their data, not on whether they were statistically independent, which I believe is something that they waived 5 months ago. So if you'd like to see the article or hear testimony from Mr. Sims, if that's the only issue, the article clearly addresses it. There's nothing else on the scientific horizon to the contrary.
When do you anticipate getting to this particular issue, attempting to multiply the DOJ results with the Cellmark results?
Pretty soon.
All right, and I take it your offer of proof is the FBI database on this?
Well, the FBI article demonstrates the independence of the D1S80 data. I mean, let's focus on the question, and if the question is, has anybody demonstrated the statistical independence of DQ alpha data from D1S80 data, from polymarker data, which are the only markers that we want to multiply? Yes, the answer is the FBI article demonstrates that statistical independence that justifies the use of the product rule.
How long is this article?
It's about, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 pages, something like that.
Just take you a couple of minutes, Judge, to read that over.
All right, well, let me see it. Although better this than a 6-week DNA hearing. While we're waiting for Mr. Sims to retrieve that article, Ms. Clark and Mr. Cochran, or Mr. Shapiro, have we reviewed those reports?
Yes,
Are there some sensitive matters there?
we have some posters we'd like to show you, I think on those sides.
All right.
Prepare our posters.
Would you have Mr. Golub come out, please?
Ron, could we put this on the glove board? Is that big enough, Jim? Thank you.
Better. No, Steve. Oh, terrific. All right, counsel. This may only be 5 pages, but it's the kind of thing you can't read in 2 minutes. At least not me. Let's proceed with what you have, Mr. Harmon. And you can present the, we'll stop at the point where you want to combine the results with Cellmark's results, and we'll quit there for the day, because I'll need to read this. And Mr. Scheck, if you have any competing articles or any additional articles in the area, I'd like to see them.
You say competing articles.
Or
You've seen-
anything that disputes this,
Oh,
ha-
well.
having not read it, I don't know what it says.
No, you've read, I trust, a lot that disputes it previously. The issue is this article is the first that's emerged in the literature even reporting on this question. So it's at the cutting edge. I mean, D1S80, we didn't have a hearing. But D1S80 is not exactly a frequent character, as a frequent marker system in proceedings anywhere. So that's our problem here. I think that
All
when you
right, no,
read
I'm
the-
just, Mr. Scheck, all I'm doing is inviting you to provide me with any other information that you have.
Well, the court's done extensive reading, I trust, already, with respect to the fundamentals of this. All that I'm saying is that this article just came out.
Okay.
Undoubtedly, there are general responses, as you know, to this and to the size of the database and the rest of it. But it's too new for there even to be published responses at this stage.
All right. All right, Mr. Harmon, we're clear. We'll get up to that point where you want to combine the polymarkers and the other Cellmark DQ alpha results, and we'll quit there.
It would appear that the SOX may be that point. And I may even try to skip that. I know we want to take advantage of the time, so I'll do the best I can to work around, since that's a discrete board.
All right. Let's have the jury, please.
Forensic DNA typing 8 times, is that correct?
Yes.
And all of those cases involve PCR typing of one sort or another?
Yes, I believe most of them did. There may have been one that did not.
Okay, and what about how often or how frequently in those 8 cases did you testify about RFLP?
I believe that was in 7 of the 8 I discussed RFLP.
And in each of those cases which involved RFLP typing, were you qualified to express an opinion about the frequency estimate of the significance of the matches?
Well, in those cases in which that came up, yes, I was qualified to do that.
Okay. And do you keep abreast of the scientific literature in the area of forensic DNA typing as it relates to these frequency estimates?
Yes, I do.
Have you reviewed numerous scientific articles which address the frequency estimates which are designed to express significance of these matches?
Yes.
Yeah. Among those articles, are there actually articles in which frequency data, the raw data, is actually published?
Yes.
And are there other sources of frequency data which are made available to forensic DNA typing experts?
Yes.
What kinds of, or what are those other sources?
Well, for example, through our exchanges, such as the California Association of Criminalists, one may exchange data, present it, and then exchange it in that fashion.
And what's the purpose of that exchange of data?
Well, it's a professional exchange of information, so that, for example, a compilation of data may be transferred from one individual who's put such a compilation together to the rest of the forensic community so that they can use it.
And is there also a massive compilation of RFLP data that's available through the federal government?
Yes, there is a very large set of data now that is available through the federal government.
In a very brief description, could you tell us what that data consists of?
That data is a compilation of actually worldwide RFLP data. It encompasses, I believe, 4 volumes in a government publication. It's a worldwide study.
And not to get too technical here, but does it include data produced from the restriction enzyme HA3, which you use,
Yes, it does.
and data produced by the restriction enzyme that Cellmark uses, HINF1?
Yes, there is a volume dedicated to the HINF enzyme, as I recall.
And more specifically, do you have a compilation of data that was compiled by Dr. Edward Blake and others?
Yes, I do.
And is that additionally one source of PCR data information that you use?
Yes.
And what sources is that data derived from?
Well, there are a large number of sources for that data. Most of it is published data. Some of it has been presented, that sort of thing.
And that's the same Dr. Blake that took all the pictures in this case?
Yes, it is.
Have you compiled population frequency estimates for the testing that your lab conducted in this case?
Yes.
And are you prepared, if we go in ascending numerical order, to write those frequency estimates on the board for us?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, could we start out with the Rockingham board, Your Honor?
Yes.
Exhibit 261. Could have. Mr. Sims, I'm going to ask you to write these things up in a minute. I want you to explain where the data was derived from for the DQ alpha frequencies that you're about to put up there, and what source the data for the D1S80 frequency was from.
Yes, the DQ alpha frequencies are derived from a worldwide compilation of Dr. Edward Blake's that was put together in 1994 by Dr. Blake. And that would cover the 3 different groups that I will mention, which are the African American, the Caucasian, and the Hispanic data. Then the D1S80 data derives from 2 sources. The African American and Caucasian D1S80 data is from the FBI, and then the Hispanic D1S80 data was derived from the Orange County Sheriff's Department database.
What I'd like you to do, I only want to put a range of numbers up there. Could you please describe for the jury the frequency of the combined type that you produce from DQ alpha in this case, and in all 3 of those groups?
This would be just DQ alpha.
Just DQ, and I'm not asking you to write it. I just want you to articulate it for us, and then
Okay, for a particular type?
for DQ alpha 1.1, 1.2.
Okay. Would you like the range?
The 3 groups and then the range.
Okay. The 3 groups would be the African American group, and would you like a figure for that?
Sure.
Okay. The African American group for the 1.1, 1.2 would be about 1 in 12. The figure for the Caucasian group would be 1 in 18, and the figure for the Hispanic group would be 1 in 40.
Okay, and I'd like to ask you the same question about the frequencies for those same groups for the D1S80 type that you found 2425.
Okay, 2425. Excuse me. For the African American database, this is just D1S80 type 2425. African American would be about 1 in 47, or 1 in 48, one might round it to. For the Caucasian, it would be about 1 in 29, and for the Hispanic, it would be about 1 in 36.
Okay, and if you would, I'd like you to strike that. Is it appropriate, based on your review of the scientific literature, to multiply the combined frequencies of the DQ alpha type by the D1S80 type?
Objection.
What's the nature of the objection?
Your Honor, this is the issue that you haven't decided.
Wait, DQ alpha?
Multiplying DQ alpha against D1S80, that's what you just told him you were going to decide.
No, that was cell mark results versus,
No,
yes,
that's the article that you're about to read, Your Honor.
yes, I understand. Proceed. Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is it appropriate to do so?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay. And what I'd like you to do, if you would, is describe the combined frequency of the DQ alpha type 1112 and D1S80 type 2425 in those three groups again.
In those three groups,
Yes.
for the African American data, it would be about 1 in 572, or I'm sorry, about 1 in 570, I would round that to. For the Caucasian group, it would be about 1 in 520, and for the Hispanic group, it would be about 1 in 1400. Excuse me.
Okay. And what I'd like you to do now is, would it be appropriate to give the jury an appreciation to describe the range